Hello, and welcome to the Northeast Ohio Media Group Candidate Debates. Thanks for joining us. I'm Chanda Neely. Today we're hosting a debate for the Rocky River School Board up for election November 3rd. The candidates will introduce themselves in a minute, but first, the rules. We will start with 1 minute for each candidate to introduce themselves and explain why they're running. Then we'll ask questions, giving each candidate 90 seconds to answer and a minute for any follow-up. At the end, we will allow for 10 minutes for the candidates to ask each other questions, with 60 seconds permitted for the answers. So, let's get started. We'll start with you, Mrs. Leitch. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Diana Leitch. I'm what you call a soccer mom. I had 4 daughters, play soccer, and I drive a van. But when I thought about running for school board, I heard them, same thing I preached to them all the years. Go for it, Mom, you can do it. About 20 years ago, I started running book fairs and ended up being PTA president of 4 different units, 4 different schools in Rocky River. After I was PTA president for the 4 different years, I moved on and was president of Boosters for 2 years. During my 2 years as Booster president, we donated over $100,000 to the Rocky River schools. I'm a certified public accountant and treasurer of 2 nonprofits, and I understand how these extra funds come in handy. And while I was busy doing these extracurricular items, my daughters were busy involved in the school. They were in almost every sport, show choir, drama choir, student council. They were in honors and AP classes and non-honors classes. I understand a lot of parents, how they are sometimes frustrating days and some great times. I appreciate I'm a candidate for Rocky River School Board because I think I know a lot about our schools and can hand some already excellent school. My soccer mom days are over, but my days of encouraging kids to go for it and you can do it are not. I'm a candidate for Rocky River Schools.
Thank you. And Mrs. Olander?
I'm Addie Olander, a candidate for Rocky River School Board. With 2 children now in college, we've experienced every phase of the excellent Rocky River K-12 education. Now I want to give back and keep our schools and community strong by serving as the eyes, ears, and voice of the community on the school board. I feel I'm best able to do this because of my experience in the business of education. With a master's degree in journalism, I've spent over 20 years consulting and advising Northeast Ohio companies on how to communicate effectively with their employees. I've taught in classrooms as a part-time substitute teacher in our district. And as a parent volunteer, I've passed out levy flyers, planned PTA events, and served on the curriculum committee, just to name a few. On our Education Foundation, I worked on scholarship donor development, finance, and awarding classroom grants. As a result, I have a unique understanding of our schools from the inside out that I can bring to support the district's mission. My promise to voters is this: I will work with the board to use tax dollars wisely to keep our schools excellent, using open communication and balanced views to benefit our students, parents, teachers, and residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schwartz?
Yes, thank you. Hi, my name is Scott Swartz. I'm currently on the school board, completing my 12th year of service. I've been president 4 times, including this year, and I just completed a run of 6 years of chairing the Finance Committee, and I currently chair the Facilities Committee for the board. My family and I have lived in Rocky River for most of the last 30 years. I think the vote you're going to cast in November is a very important one because serving on the board is not, it includes but is not about passion or about giving back or having time. It is not just even about pure intellect. It is about having some wisdom to be able to allocate scarce resources, how to find solutions to problems that have no apparent solution, and being able to deal with different factions who have very competing interests among the residents and the parents of the community. I ask that you think wisely when you cast your vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. And Mr. Zuercher?
Hello, I'm John Zuercher. I would like to thank cleveland.com for hosting this event. I've lived in Rocky River since 1991. My wife Dee and I have 3 children in the Rocky River school system. Eddie's a 10th grader at the high school, Aoife's an 8th grade at the middle school, and Rory's a 4th grader at Kensington. It's been a great experience for them. It's a great school system. I'm a software developer and systems analyst at CGI Federal. I work on Medicare and Medicaid audits. I help create the front-end system that evaluates those. I've also helped develop and maintain a medical grouping and pricing for the Blue Cross and Blue Shield. I believe my professional experience would be a great asset when evaluating classroom technology and other computer systems. Also, I would like to implement basic software development classes into the curriculum at the middle school and the high school. Currently, they have technology classes, but the students in the technology classes, it's more of them using software rather than creating software. I want the kids to learn how to create software. Currently, there's a huge demand for software developers in Cleveland, and I want two things. One, I would like the students to create an interest in software development, and two, I would like to better prepare them for college. It's an excellent, Rocky River is an excellent school system, excellent students, teachers, parents, administrator, and board, and I'd like to be on that board.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move into some of the questions now. First, the district will lose $400,000 in state funding in 2016-17, and Rocky River already ranks near the bottom of Ohio school districts in per pupil funding, set to receive an estimated $595 per student next school year, while statewide districts on average are projected to receive more than $5,000 per student. Voters last approved a 4.9 mil tax increase in 2012. How long can the district wait before they have to go back to the voters? And we'll start with you, Ms. Leitch.
Luckily, our current financial situation is very good at the Rocky River, and our tax base is pretty strong. We have new businesses coming in, so that's nice, and home values are going up, so that's all good things. We do usually go back every 3 to 4 years. Sometimes we stretch it out to 5 years, so I'm sure we'll be in that same rotation, except now that we have this extra funding and catching up on some of the tax base that we lost during some tough times. I would probably look at some administrative cuts, maybe a little bit. It seems like we're a little administratively high, but I would never cut anything having to do with the arts, the drama, the choirs, any of that. That's kind of where my passion is, to keep all that in the schools. But yes, I think we do regularly go back to the voters. Thank you.
Okay. And Ms. Olander?
Yes, I know our board and our district is very committed to not going back to the taxpayers any more often than they have to. And they've done a great job of sharpening their pencil and really watching expenses to make sure that we aren't overburdening the taxpayers in Rocky River. I know one thing that might help our financial picture a little bit is the addition of the Brighton Chase apartments. At the last board meeting, I heard that would bring somewhere in the neighborhood of 250, close to 300,000 of additional tax revenue into the district, which certainly helps. But I know that one thing, again, that our district is known for is its financial reporting and management. Our treasurer, Greg Marcus, has won awards for the financial reporting of the district. So the district is very aware of taxpayers. We appreciate their support, and I know they'll be very careful before they go back to the voters.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes, traditionally we have, and when I say traditionally, I'd say going back 20, 25 years, we were in a pattern of every 3 years being on the ballot with an operating levy for the general fund, not including bond issues for buildings and so forth. About 5 or 6 years ago, we started to make some inroads into not having to be on the ballot every 3 years. We did pass our last levy in 2012, which means we should be sitting here for November 2015 talking about a levy, and we're not. And we're not talking about one next year. We're not talking about one the year after that, unless we have changes that we can't foresee at this time. That has been done through very skilled negotiating and cooperation with our two unions, our teachers union and our non-teachers unions, who have been very helpful with our administration in coming up with packages for their employment and their benefits that allow us to stretch our dollars. It's been done through consortium buying of gasoline and supplies where we can cut our unit costs. And I think our administration has done a fabulous job in avoiding being on the ballot. That's not to say we never will be. The fact of the matter is, under our school funding formula, which you could take back to the Supreme Court decisions of the 90s and the DeRolf decision, we are capped. Just because property values go up doesn't mean we get a commensurate increase in tax dollars. So we'll always have the issue.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Zuercher?
Yeah, I just want to say it is one of my pet peeves that the state has already cut our funding before, and then they're threatening to cut more. I mean, we are a great school system, and we get rewarded by the state by cutting our funding, which doesn't make any sense. we've already made a lot of, like Scott said, a lot of cuts in our school system, which save us tremendous amount of money. Unfortunately, if we do receive more state cuts, we probably will have to introduce another levy, operating levy. And I would support that operating levy if it's necessary.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Rocky River has done, a good job, and as you all have mentioned, the district normally, as Mr. Swartz mentioned specifically, would go back every 3 years, and we're on a 3-year cycle, and that's set to come up this year, and it did not happen. So again, I'll ask, and back to you, Ms. Leitch, then how long can the district wait before they'll have to go back to voters?
Well, if it's a 4-year cycle, it'd be 2016, and sometimes we stretch it out to 2017. But I imagine in 2016 we'll start going through, cuts or looking at things we can cut, or start. We usually do a survey with the community to see how open they are, or how they feel about a levy before we actually go on the ballot. But we probably will be back at least by 2017, I would imagine.
Okay. And Ms. Olander, how long do you think the district can wait before they'll have to go back?
Well, I would want to take a closer look at all the financials and understand the situation a little bit better. Again, we're in very good hands. We have a great district. We watch our expenses very, very carefully. I'm hoping they can stretch it another couple of years, but I also know that they will do a lot of community listening to make sure that the time is right and that the community is well informed as to the need for the levy. It is just a fact that in our district, 75% of our funding is from local taxes, where in other districts it's more like 40–45% because they get another 40% from the state, and our state funding is about 15%. So it's just a reality of our district, and as Mr. Zuercher said, it's a shame that a district that does the right things, that's how we're rewarded, so to speak, by the state.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Schwartz, I'm sure you have more of an inside look than any other candidates. What do you think? How long can the district wait before?
Well, our 5-year forecast, which we have to update twice a year, and is currently on our website. Last time we updated it was May. By resolution of the board, we adopted a 5-year forecast, and so it's available for the public to review. We show that as things stand now with current assumptions, that somewhere in around the 2018 year, we would start to run out of general operating fund money. But that includes, of course, pages and pages of assumptions of things. We have to assume state aid. We have to assume collections on property taxes and what health care costs will be, which we do to the best of our ability. But it's still a projection. The interesting thing about getting less than $600 of state aid per student is how much more can they really cut our state aid? So that's really not going to be what drives it. What drives it is containing our costs more than anything.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Zuercher, would you like to follow up?
I would just say that it's so hard to predict, like Scott said, it's without knowing what's going to be cut. I mean, what the future lies ahead in terms of healthcare expenses and other expenses. It's just hard to say. So I just have to say, not to pass on that.
Okay, thank you. Next question, we'll start with you, Ms. Olander. Rocky River ranked 5th in the state in key performance categories for the last state report card. That would have been for 2013-2014, earning A's in 7 of the 9 categories and meeting all 24 indicators. What makes Rocky River an outstanding school district in your eyes?
Gosh, that's actually an easy question. We have a situation in Rocky River where, as I've said earlier, we're all in this together. We have great schools. We have great school buildings that have recently been updated and are completely technologically ready for all the technology that kids need today. We have great teachers, the cream of the crop teachers, who really care about our students and are very devoted. We have great parents who believe heavily in the value of education and make sure kids are there at school on time and ready to learn. We have a great board and a great administration that makes sure that we're doing the right things for our kids. If you look at our district mission, talking about globally competitive, successful students, caring environment, we're doing all the right things to give our students in this district all the possible opportunities to succeed. So I think that's why it's that team effort and collaboration that makes our district so successful.
Thank you. Mr. Schwartz.
Yes, I think you're referring to the performance index, which we were around 111.4 or something like that last time. We've been in the top 5 of that statewide performance index for the last several years. It bounces around just depending on how other districts are doing as well, of course. What's critical to note about that performance index is it's not based on national merit finalists or what selective colleges kids get into. It is a measure of report card indicators across the board, all grades, all students, including special needs, including gifted, including students who are neither. And we're especially proud of that performance index because what it measures, what it tells the public is, are you educating every student? Not just are you putting a lot of kids into stellar programs post-high school career, and not just do you bring a lot of resources to special needs programs, what we do, but is every child progressing? And it's just, I think, a great indicator of how well we're doing. We're really proud of it.
Mr. Zuercher.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that, yeah, we have great teachers, great parents, and great students, but I think one of the things that makes us stand out is we have uniqueness for each student level. If a kid's struggling, we find ways to help that kid, put them on IEPs, and then also the gifted kids, they get selected programs as well. I know with my one son, he started out in kindergarten, and he was having trouble with reading and phonics. He got pulled out to get help with phonics. By the time he was in 5th grade, he was in the gifted program. It just shows that how well these selected programs work for the kids individually.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Leitch.
I agree with all three of my friends here because I do believe it's the community supporting the schools, it's the parents, having so many different features they can offer their children, great teachers. But I also agree that I also had a child that couldn't read in 6th grade, and that our school district tutored her every single day for one period, and she's a nurse now, and I appreciate that because it was a rough road having a parent I was so frustrated having a child not being able to read in 6th grade that it's hard to work with your own child. But I appreciated the resources that were dedicated to that one child not getting lost in the system.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Olander, is there anything you'd like to follow up on that question? No, or anything? Okay, Mr. Schwartz, anything else?
I would like to mention, and Addie indicated it, all the different levels that sort of a performance index comes from. You don't get there just by having a strong board or teachers. You can point to any district in Ohio where you have good teachers and you have good administrators and parents who support their kids' activities. But when it's all working together in a nice, balanced concert, that's when it really happens. There's a buzz that just raises everybody, and the administration has a vision to put the teachers into the best performance situations, placing teachers where they can best perform or where they can most help the children. Tutors is a huge thing. It's been indicated here. We have the luxury of community financial support that allows for us to have more tutors probably than most districts do. And that adds it extends the reach of the teacher very much.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Zuercher, anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's good.
Okay, what about you?
No, that's
Okay, Mr. Schwartz, you had mentioned it's about an overall picture. It's about educating all students. On that same report card, the district maintained a C for 2 consecutive years for value-added growth in students with disabilities, yes, and also a B in value-added for students in the lowest 20% of academic achievement. What does the district need to do to improve upon those marks?
We need to keep researching and evaluating what caused those scores, because we have a very small number of students in, for example, those subgroups, is what they're called, subgroups. And when you have a small number, statistical method doesn't work anymore. You can have some students that might skew the results because there's not enough in the subgroup to have it statistically all average out. That being said, it can get better. I personally am opposed to what we have to do with our special needs students as far as doing standardized tests. I think the state is absolutely wrong about it. There should be ways for special needs students to do better, to improve, to enter into mainstream life without having to go through tests that are designed for students that don't have the special needs. So we have to work harder at that. We work hard. We have to do better at that. most every district, Solon would be an example. Solon's always at the top of the performance index. What's the one area they struggle with? Subgroup of special needs scoring on that report card. It affects a lot of good districts. We don't ignore it. And I don't have the educational background, the doctorate, the master's in educational process to know exactly what needs to be done. I just know we're aware of it.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Zuercher?
Yeah, I think first you have to go back and reevaluate and verify that they really are performing at a below level. And if they are, then you have to evaluate the program and the tutors and the approach they're taking and maybe take a new approach, but obviously, improve and increase their scores.
Okay, Ms. Leitch?
It does sound crazy to have standardized testing for kids with special needs, so I agree with Scott. You have to look at exactly, what's going on with their disabilities and how we can help them, but do it on a one-on-one, especially if the numbers aren't that great. I can see where it's skewed, but hopefully we're not forgetting about them, and hopefully we're on top of it.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Olander?
Yes, I know for a fact the district is on top of it. I know that those scores were mentioned in all the reporting about our report card when those came out. And I know they're looking at that. I know we put a lot of resources into those kids, as Scott mentioned, with all the tutors and other aids and resources that we have. I know the district was disappointed with that score, but I also know they're very committed to improving it.
Okay, and Mr. Schwartz, anything you'd like to follow up with that
I
on?
think everybody's had very nice comments about that.
Okay, Mr. Zuercher?
No.
Ms.
no thanks.
Leitch? Ms. Olander? Okay, well, you kind of already touched on it a little bit, but kind of share a little bit more, starting with you, Mr. Zuercher. What do you think of state-required standardized testing? Do you think there should be more local control to determine students' proficiency?
Yeah, what you have is you have the federal government that comes up with the Common Core, and you have the state government that is testing to see where we stand in relation to reaching our goals for Common Core. Rocky River does very well in these tests, and I think it might be a little overboard sometimes with the testing. I know they're reducing it this coming year, which is good. A lot of this testing is put in to catch underperforming districts. Our district is way overperforming. So from that point of view, I don't like the fact that I wouldn't like the fact that the teachers, and they're not doing this, they're not teaching to the test. They're able to teach in Rocky River and get good test scores regardless of that. And I think just in closing, we get results back from the test scores, and that helps us to reevaluate some of our programs. Like if they're not doing well in fractions, we can go back and say, all right, what do we have to do to improve the kids learning fractions, as an example.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Leitch, what are your thoughts on state-required standardized testing?
I think it's good to have standards in education. I'm not for all the testing, but I think they're tweaking it. I know we switched testing in Ohio, so it's a different testing, and so hopefully not quite so much. But I know the testing puts a lot of pressure on the teachers, and it's probably, it doesn't have the interaction maybe with a teacher and a child like you could if you have extra time to ask the questions, and also bring some of the teachers' passions of what they'd like to have in it. I don't think the country needs to all be on page 29 of the certain book, so I think the standards are a little tight right now. But I think the concept is good, but it still needs to be worked out a little bit more.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Olander?
Oh gosh, let me say this. We need not to teach to the test, but to teach for success. And I think, unfortunately, the current approach to testing has become far too intense, far too complex, far too much overemphasis on the test and its outcome. And we're trying to take what is perhaps a basic proficiency test, and it's gotten blown completely out of proportion. And I do not think you can reduce a student to a single number. I don't think you can reduce a teacher to a single number, and I don't think you can reduce a district to a single number. So I think assessments are very important, but the way they have been developed and the way it has come out with Common Core, it's a good thing that Ohio has said enough. We're not going to go this route. Now, with that being said, I will also say that having a basic proficiency test and having that nationally normed is an important data point to have. If you go from district to district or state to state, I think it's important if we can assess and know, has this student met basic proficiency for 4th grade, for 5th grade, for 6th grade? But those tests should be basic proficiency. They shouldn't be Mensa tests for 4th graders or tests that the parents can't pass. They should be basic proficiency. So that's an important data point to have about your district, how well your kids are prepared. But the way it's been done right now has not been a good way.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Swartz, your thoughts?
I have mixed feelings about standardized tests. I think they have their uses and they can be abused. I think our teachers do a great job of preparing to integrate the standardized test into the education year. Is there teaching to the test? No one wants their kids in their classroom not to do well. Every teacher in Ohio is going to be conscious of the results on that test because that's the system we're under. But our teachers are doing a great job of not letting it dominate the school year. And really, our kids just, we have great kids in this district due to the parents being so supportive. So they come prepared, and it makes it easier on the teachers for the kids to score well. I'd like there to be less. I don't view it as our top priority to lobby for less. We have other concerns that would exceed that. So it's just the system we live in. I don't think we spend a lot of time dreading it. We just throw us some rules, tell us what we have to achieve, and we'll achieve it, and we'll achieve it better than anybody else. That's how we approach it.
Okay, that's good. And just to follow up, Mr. Zuercher, if you can touch on a little bit more about the local aspect. Do you think there should be more local control to determine students' proficiency?
When you say local in our district?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be nice. We could change the test so that it's more directed towards where our level is, which is much higher than most districts. So yes.
Okay.
And we could also help prepare kids for the ACT and the SAT, which is important.
Okay. Ms. Leitch?
I wouldn't want to see any more local control until we get rid of all the national control and the state control. I think we have enough control. I mean, like you say, hiring good teachers and giving them good curriculum with the standards that we have in there now. But we probably don't need any more testing. We need probably less testing and to trust the teachers that we hire, that they're professional and they get the job done.
Thank you. Same question, Ms. Olander.
Sure, just with some follow-up.
Sure.
There should be some local understanding of how well we educate our students, and there's actually information on the Rocky River website, which is our quality profile. And what this does, to my point earlier, that you can't reduce the district to its number. Our numbers are great, our students test very well, but there's so much more to the education that we provide in Rocky River. So I would highly encourage people to look at this quality profile that's on the Rocky River Schools website. It goes into all the different areas where we successfully prepare students and create well-rounded students when they leave our school system.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Schwartz?
I think on balance, if you were saying trade into local control in exchange for less state oversight or less federal oversight, most of the oversight is state. I would say yes, a district like ours would love to have that. We'd love to run our own show, to do the sort of education each year that we think is best. Like I said, I don't think the standardized tests are hurting our educational process. It could be better without them. And there are situations where standardized tests, as I mentioned, have mixed feelings, have their uses. You might identify that child here or there more than once or twice, that a test will bring out something that maybe you weren't observing otherwise. And we actually make use of testing that we don't have to do in preparing students for the ACT and SAT. We do extra at the high school practice testing, and it has shown up. Our scores have gone up as a result of practicing those tests. We live in a world of tests, so we might as well do our best at it.
Okay. And back to you, Ms. Leitch. Some school districts like Westlake and North Olmsted have moved to later start times, and a lot of other districts are talking of moving to later start times. What are your thoughts on a later start time for high school students?
Well, luckily, our high school is not as early as a lot of them are. I forget if it's 8 o'clock. It seems like I forget by the time you drop off one child at middle school and then you get over to the high school. But we've never been that really early. I know my niece went at like at 7:15, so I am definitely not for a 7:15 time. And high school kids stay up late, so I would be for a late start time. But I feel like at least we're first period starting at 8 is not too bad. And they're going to see those college classes start at 8 and even earlier. One of my kids had a 7 a.m. class at Ohio State. So I don't think 8's too bad for the world.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, based on the research I've done, it does show that a later start time helps, but what the start time they talk about is in the zone of 8 to 8:30. We currently start our high school at 7:55. So districts that had start times of 7:15 and earlier have found that the later start times have helped. The issue, however, is it's not a decision you can make in a vacuum. Obviously, we have transportation, other school start times, traffic around town, when kids are crossing the streets, after school activities. All of that has to be coordinated with any change in the start time. So might they look at changing it a little bit? We're kind of right in the zone of that 8 to 8:30, but any decision about that would have to be coordinated with all the other issues that would impact in terms of school and school days across the district.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schwartz?
We do right now with our high school, and there is certainly research to indicate that students of that age, adolescents of that age, teenagers do better with a little bit of a later start because their clocks don't wind down at night as early as people like me. But we do already 1 day a week have what's called to the students late start. It's a professional community day for our teachers and our high school administrators to have various programming that they use on Wednesdays to have an extra hour of planning and interactive time amongst themselves. And the students don't show up until 8:55 rather than 7:55. And they will guard that with their lives. I think once you introduce something like that, you'll never get it back out. If you started the day later, something would have to give. What would probably happen is you'd have extracurricular activities start to meet before school because they've been squeezed out at the end of the day. Because we're not talking about shortening the school day. I don't know where we would pinch off school minutes each day. So if you're starting later, you're ending later. And if you're ending later, then coaches and advisors start looking to before school activities, and then you're right back where you were anyway, for the most part.
Okay, Mr. Zuercher.
Yeah, I know my son appreciates sleeping in every Wednesday morning. It's great for him. It's great for us too. I think that the start time is pretty close to where we want to be. If we pushed it back another 15 minutes or so, yeah, it probably would be. I would go for that, definitely.
Okay.
So.
And Ms. Leitch, any follow-up?
No.
Ms. Olander?
No.
Mr. Schwartz?
No, ma'am.
No.
Okay, moving on. In North Royalton middle and high schools, there was a drug sweep that ended up in 7 arrests. That was back in 2012. And a lot of schools have instituted drug testing, whether it be just for sports or what have you. Would you support police department doing unannounced drug sweep of lockers at the high school or drug testing? Either or. We'll start with you, Ms. Olander.
You're asking if I would be supportive of that, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
either the drug testing or the police department during the unannounced sweeps.
Okay. My understanding is that our district does, on occasion, do the sweep in the schools. My feeling is that it's the district's responsibility to ensure that there is a safe, healthy environment conducive to learning available to students. So I believe part of that responsibility is making sure that it is drug-free. However, I have to say that with a strong warning that it's important that it's done right. It's important that it's done in cooperation with the police department. It's important that students' privacies are protected. And there's a way to do it right and there's a way to do it wrong. But in general, I am a supporter of that to make sure that our school campuses are safe and healthy and conducive for our students to learn.
Thank you. Mr. Schwartz, your thoughts?
Our policy is, of course, zero tolerance for the presence of drugs or alcohol on school grounds, whether it be during the school day or at games or concerts or whatever it might be, zero tolerance. And the only way you can ensure you're reaching zero tolerance is to have measures to test for that. We do, on occasion, have unannounced sweeps through the school. Our administration works extremely close with our local police department to do these things well, to chart out exactly what's done, what the procedures are for if there is a suspected locker. I think they're carried out very well and in a very unobtrusive way, and no one knows they're happening before they happen. I'm not personally in favor of drug testing at this time. We, by law, are not allowed to drug test students, so it would only be applied to extracurricular students, and that really, I don't think would get to a result that is the purpose of doing the drug testing if you're only drug testing students who have volunteered to be more engaged in their school than those that are not.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Zuercher.
Yeah, I would support, I don't support drug testing, but I would support the drug sweeps as long as it doesn't disrupt the day and no rights are violated, no privacies are violated.
Okay, thank you. Any follow-up?
I didn't get to answer that, but I was going to also say that I would be for the drug sweeps of the schools. We've done them in the past. They're fairly, kids accept them, and they get some good stories out of them. I think one time we got the construction worker's car, got nabbed instead of a student's car. It was the construction worker that got in trouble for the drugs in the car. So that was pretty funny. But I think there's something to be discussed about extracurricular students, like people in sports and stuff, having that drug testing. I think by law, if it's an elective situation that we're allowed to drug test them, then I think it's something to consider. I know there's a lot of people with sports that have gotten injuries, gotten drugs. So I think it's something to discuss, and I wouldn't be against it.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask
That's
you that
okay.
first.
That's okay.
Ms. Olander, you mentioned, and any follow-up also as well, and you also mentioned so long as it's done the right way.
Yes,
can you
I do want to make a quick follow-up. One thing that we have in the schools is a resource officer. He is a police officer that spends part of his time of his year in the schools, and he is a tremendous resource for our students as well, to make sure that there's a healthy, safe environment. The other thing I want to mention is the main reason for doing this is to get kids the help or support they need. We want to keep our kids safe and healthy, and the purpose of this is not to punish kids, but to make sure they can get into the eduvention programs or other intervention so that they are making different choices going further. That's part of a good education as well. So I just want to clarify that that's part of the reason for doing this, is to get kids the support they need so that they're making better choices.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schwartz, any follow-up?
It was mentioned by Diana being in favor of considering drug testing. We have considered the pros and cons in the past. We've chosen not to do that. I'm not saying I'm not in favor of considering it, but I would disagree and say I'm in favor of thinking it's a good idea. I think there would be a whole host of negative ramifications by introducing drug testing on a select group of students and not others. And I don't think at this time there is a solution that overcomes those negative aspects of that.
Thank you. And Mr. Zuercher?
Yeah, I agree with Scott. I don't think it's a good idea to drug test the students, and I think you can run into some legal issues with it and just cost the district a lot of money.
Okay. Any follow-up, Ms. Leitch?
Go ahead.
Okay. One thing I wanted to bring up also was all-day kindergarten. I know Rocky River does not offer all-day kindergarten at this time. So what are your thoughts about the district offering all-day kindergarten? Do you think that's a good thing to have or an option to have for the district, Mr. Schwartz?
We considered all-day kindergarten very strongly back when we did our bond issue around 2010, in part because the state under former Governor Ted Strickland was going to mandate that all districts have an all-day kindergarten program. So when we did our bond issue, we priced it out to expand our primary school to house that. As the school stands now, we wouldn't have room for that because we have kindergarten classes which are filled half day for different groups of students. So by definition, if you're going to have all of those students going all day, we would need a lot more classrooms and everything that goes with that. We have not felt there was a groundswell of community urgency for that. We know that there are community members who very much would like to have all-day kindergarten, especially people with children in that age group. As it prices out right now, it would cost us somewhere between $1.2 million and $1.5 million to build the building necessary to do that, as well as add the technology and the furniture and the curriculum supplies. It would also cost us probably between $400,000 to $500,000 a year to run that program because of the extra personnel and benefits and so forth, all of the extra human relations, human resource costs that go with that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Zuercher?
Yeah, I think in theory it's a great idea. If you have kids that are kindergarten age, it'd be nice to have them go all day. In saying that, I have 3 kids. One of them went to all-day kindergarten at St. Thomas Lutheran. He did very well with it. I had another kid that I think if he would have went to all-day kindergarten, it would have just been too much for him. It would have been overwhelming. But I think the bottom line is it financially feasible? And it's like Scott just mentioned the numbers, and that's pretty expensive. And I think unless we definitely have the community pushing for it, and the majority of the community really pushing for it and saying this is definitely what we want, I would probably be against it.
Thank you. Mrs. Leitch?
As I'm out walking the streets, talking to the neighbors and all about the campaign, I'm feeling like there might be a groundswell. A lot of people talk to me about all-day kindergarten, saying they want it. A lot of single parents, a lot of 2 working parents, they seem to want all-day kindergarten. I think kids are expected to do so much more than they maybe were even 10 years ago. I appreciated having my kids home. I liked having them home. But I also have come in contact with younger kids, and they are sponges at that age. And knowing what I know, seeing how smart they are by having so much into them at such a young age, might send my kids to all-day kindergarten, because I've been very impressed with how much they learned at such a young age.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Olander?
Once again, as a school board member, our role is to make sure that education is delivered in the community, not only according to state mandate, but according to community values. So if this is a community value in Rocky River, and if this is something that is wanted and needed, and there's the research that shows that it makes a difference, that it helps, and the community is willing to invest in that, there's a huge cost-benefit analysis. It's a significant investment, as Mr. Schwartz said. But if this is what the community wants, needs, and is willing to make that investment, then that's our job to provide it.
Okay. Mr. Schwartz, is there any follow-up?
I think it's easy for someone to say, yes, I want that. You could bring up just about any topic that would be something we don't do now, and there would be a, yes, I want that. Then you get into the hard choices of what are you going to not have by virtue of doing that. Ultimately, I've said this for years and years, ultimately a school district reflects its community. It may not match up exactly in time because those things have a period of developing, but ultimately a school district reflects its community. And so we'll end up there if that's what the community values are, but only after people understand what they're going to be giving up financially by adding it. And I don't know where we'd go educational quality-wise if we do. Look at our scores for K-3 on literacy. We can't get any better. So it's really not an educational decision. I don't think it would be more of a providing a service to our young family members.
Okay, thank you. Is there any follow-up?
No.
I would.
Go ahead.
Just to clarify, it would have to be, as Mr. Schwartz said, a community discussion. So if there is a part of the community that wants to broach that discussion, that discussion needs to happen. But there are limited resources, so people would have to understand we can't do everything for everybody. It's not an open book for what you want, but there should be a community discussion if there's a groundswell for that, and either understand why we choose to do it or why we choose not to.
Okay.
I would agree with that also.
Okay. Take a few moments if you have questions for your fellow candidates. We'll start with you, Mr. Zuercher.
Yeah, this is a simple one. The last operating levy on the ballot, did you vote yes or no? For all 3 of you, one at a time. Did you vote yes or no, and why?
Are you going reverse alphabetical?
We'll go reverse alphabetical.
Okay.
You can go first, Scott.
I voted for it, which I better because I helped approve putting it on the ballot to begin with. Those things don't come lightly. They don't. There's an enormous amount of analysis. We're already, the 5-year forecast in effect is the beginning of when Do we need a levy, and for how much? It happens over a period of many years, and constantly reevaluating our costs. Where can we cut? Where can we add? What do we do to stay off the ballot until the need arises? So I voted yes, and I've voted yes on each levy that has occurred over the last 15, 20 years because I've been satisfied the need was there.
Ms. Olander?
Well, my vote is private, but I will share that yes, I did vote for the levy. Keeping our schools strong is a big part of keeping Rocky River strong. I think we're lucky in that our community as a whole primarily realizes that. Again, taxpayers want to know their money's being used wisely, so they definitely hold our feet to the fire when it comes to levy time. They have a lot of questions. They want to understand the whys and wherefores and where it's coming from and where it's going. But I absolutely support our levies because our schools are what makes it a great community.
Ms. Leitch, respond?
I don't think I've ever not voted for a school levy. My parents were both teachers. That's something you just don't do in our house, our family. So yes, of course, I voted for the school levy, but I also get involved. I learn about it. I probably worked on the campaign and talked to the people about voting for it. So I would think anybody running for school board, we're very supportive of our school and also very involved.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schwartz, do you have a question you'd like to ask your fellow candidates?
Yes. First, I'd like to ask Diana, well, the first question we had tonight was about, you mentioned about maybe administrative costs would be where you might cut. Do you have any more detail about that?
Sometimes I wonder if we couldn't combine with, like, a curriculum director, wouldn't it be nice? I mean, I know we have a wonderful one, but are we really teaching that much curriculum difference from Bay Village, from Fairview, from Westlake? Couldn't some of those high-level jobs be combined? I mean, I wouldn't mind if my kids learned the same curriculum as they did in Bay Village or in Westlake. And would it really be that much harder to spread out some of those kind of costs? I mean, I think our technology director is fabulous. I have no complaints. I just think some of those high-end positions over a small community would be nice to spread out. That was what I would say.
And although I directed at Diana, certainly anybody else that would like to weigh in on that.
And there might be other positions. I just kind of bring curriculum to it because I just can't imagine our curriculum is that much different from our neighboring communities, and especially Bay Village that's always comparable, the same size, the same kind of community, the parents, the economics. Couldn't we share that resource?
Okay. Ms. Olander, do you have any thoughts about that?
No, I have no further thoughts on that. But I do have a question. Let me know when you're ready.
If Mr. Zuercher can answer first, and then we'll get to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'll answer. My son's first grade teacher, when we going in to visit her and discuss
where he's at with his education, I thought for sure he was going to be at a high level, like one of the top readers in the class. And we went in there, spoke with her, and found out he was more at the mid-level. And I was comparing it to my other kids because he's a very good reader. And she said, well, with the curriculum changes we've made in the last 10 years, and the kids, they're just learning faster and they're proceeding better. And to me, that's a seller right there. If you're making curriculum changes and we're seeing the results, and like Scott said, we look at the third grade reading level and where they're at, it's excellent, then I think these people are definitely worth what they're doing.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Olander, you had a question?
Yes, I wanted to ask everybody what they're hearing from people in the community about what's on their mind. And if I may, while they collect their thoughts, I'll share what I've been hearing. A couple things I'm hearing are, and this question has come up, what kinds of things do we need to add to our curriculum, or where do we need to beef things up a little bit? And I've heard a couple of common themes. One is we do want some enhanced technology curriculum programming. I know, Mr. Zuercher, this is something you've mentioned many times. I've also heard that they'd like to see some anatomy and physiology, health sciences preparation for students who want to go into the health sciences. And the third area is to also bump up our business education. Obviously, these are all at the high school as in preparation for college, but that's something I've heard a number of times. And then the other item I wanted to mention is that I've heard from across the community sometimes a feeling that it's not always easy to come to a board meeting to share your thoughts or ask questions. So there's a sense that people want to feel a little more welcome to come to a board meeting and share in a public forum. What else have you guys been hearing as you're talking to people in Rocky River?
Well, do you have maybe more of a specific question you want to give them? Because that was kind of a lot.
Oh, no. My question is, what are you hearing as you're talking to people in the community, as you're campaigning? And I answered the question for the
Okay.
things I've been hearing as I've been talking to people.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Some curriculum additions and more welcoming at the board meeting. Those
Okay.
are the two
Thank
issues.
you. Mr.
That
Zuercher.
helps.
I'll start. Yeah, you hear a little bit of everything. Obviously, you know, one gentleman said, well, they should teach Mandarin, Chinese. Others say, you know, the kids need to learn how to write cursive, and they do learn to write cursive. They just don't do it enough where they retain it, I think. And but people say they need to learn how to write cursive in case they're doing research, and the research papers happen to be older papers in cursive. But when I'm talking to people, I mentioned the software development, and the people are gravitating to that. They're saying that's a great idea. And you mentioned people think there should be more business classes. Well, let me tell you what the business environment is. When you look at some of our big employers in the greater Cleveland area, you look at the large banks, they have more software developers than they have bankers. You look at the large insurance companies, they have more software developers than insurance companies. That's where business is coming to. It's all software development.
Okay.
And that's why I want to push these software development courses.
Okay. Sir. Mr. Swartz.
Yes, it's interesting that the person who's at every board meeting never has heard the comment about it being more welcoming, certainly not in the last many years. And since nobody here at the table has really been at many board meetings prior to the past month, I guess I'll speak to that. I'm not aware of there ever being an unwelcoming. And most of the times we have an empty room. I guess maybe perhaps that's because people don't think they'd be welcome if they did come, but I'd ask people to just try it. Please come to our meetings. There's always room for public commentary if they wish to do so. The commentary extends longer than they would probably expect if they're the only one there, but when we do have a crowd, we have to limit it because we just have to give everybody equal time. So I'm really puzzled by that comment when no one bothers to come to even find out. What do I hear? You get the various, you get sports a lot. There's always something we could be doing better. Why do we sweep left when we should be sweeping right in the football game? But any variety of sports and coaching comments is what you get. Odds and ends, educational-wise, I think it's been very on point to mention the technology and engineering because we know that that's something we're getting better in, and we'll address that. But those are all very good feedback.
Thank you. Ms. Leitch?
To answer the question
Yes,
or
to
a new one?
respond to Ms. Olander's question.
I probably have heard things about a little bit more welcoming at school board meetings, and I have to say I've been there myself and felt pretty nervous and was one time told to go to another committee and not speak at the meeting.
When was that?
That was a few years ago.
How long ago?
Mr. Schwartz, if you can just let her
that's
finish her
okay.
response,
But
and
yeah,
then we'll give you a chance to follow up.
everybody could always do a better job of welcoming people. And also, I feel like maybe more appreciative of volunteers. I think we could always do a better job with that, too. People do give a lot of their, like the band people, I know they do a lot of work, and sometimes they don't always feel appreciated with how much time they put in and fundraising that people do. That I imagine everybody in every job, we could always say thank you, and the teachers the same way. We just feel a little bit more appreciated. They get a nice income, but it's always good to feel like you're really thanked for what you're doing. But I haven't heard that too many things. People are pretty much positive about our school system when I walk around and talk to people. They're appreciative also of a good school system.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Zuercher, did you have any follow-up to Ms. Olander's question?
No.
Mr. Schwartz, I think there was something else you wanted
And
to
to
say.
add to Diana's question, most it's positive, and that's why we really do have a chance to respond to comments we might get on a technology program or a business education, because when you don't have hundreds of comments coming in about improving various things, it makes you more able to focus on the ones you do get. So there's always going to be things we can do better, and I'm satisfied our administration does address comments that come in. On this whole welcoming the school board, how long ago was that, Diana, that happened, that you were at a school board and you had that happen to you?
Oh, I think it was probably on equals support of women's sports that I come to the school board a
Right.
couple times.
So like
through.
7 or 8 years ago?
Yeah, it
something
seemed like
that?
people were telling me, no, you should go to the Athletic Advisory Council, and I remember thinking, I didn't know there was an Athletic Advisory Council. I just was coming to you all.
Sure.
And
I do remember what you're talking
Yeah.
about. I would add
So-
that 2 of the 5 board members that were present there are no longer on the board, and I don't think you'd be having perhaps the same dynamic now that might have happened at that time.
That's true.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I would
Mr.
like
Schwartz.
to follow up if I could
Sure, Bree, go ahead.
on that. I hope you will take that back a little bit, Scott. I truly have heard that a lot, and I was there in a meeting about a year ago, and it isn't always easy. It's a little bit hard to ask questions because you have to sign in ahead, and people feel like, what if I have a question that comes out as a result of the discussion? You're not sure if you can really raise your hand and ask the question, and sometimes it's a simple question. So I hope you really will take that back sincerely and
Sure.
encourage them to welcome people and make it known that they can ask a question based on the discussion.
Okay, so be
they
more
heard.
descriptive of the process.
Absolutely, because when I was there last month, I had a question and then submitted it via email because I hadn't signed up in advance because I didn't know I would have a question. And I submitted a question to all of you via email, and I didn't hear anything back from anyone. So that was a little bit discouraging.
The email I got was not a question, it was a statement.
Well, it was a question wanting to know more about what
Okay,
came out of...
I didn't see a
It was
question
actually a
there.
question you
Okay.
asked. I just was curious what the answer
If we
was.
could give Ms. Leitch an opportunity to ask her questions of the
Can I
candidates,
just
that'd be
say-
great.
can I just say one thing?
Briefly, quickly.
Yeah. I went to the board meeting last year, and I addressed the board, and they were very inviting, and it worked out perfect for me. So
Okay,
I
thank
didn't
you.
have the same experience they did.
Thank you. Ms. Leitch, do you want to have a
I
question
don't
for
really
your
have questions for my candidates. I just would like to say I appreciate them all running because we live in a community that people care and we all take an interest in it, and I think we're lucky to live in a community where we all step up and try and do a leadership position like this. So that's
Okay.
all. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
I second that emotion.
Okay. Does anyone want to make any final remarks? Mr. Zuercher?
No, thanks.
Remarks or questions?
Any final remarks?
Oh, no, thank you.
Ms. Olander?
No, we're good. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much for coming out. I really appreciate it. Thanks again for joining us. Please come back to cleveland.com to read stories about the debates, issues, and candidates for the upcoming election. Early voting starts October 6th. Thank you.